Well, we got people trickling in. So, and I see a lot of familiar faces, which is great. Okay, cool. So, folks, we're gonna get started. We got another fun topic. As some of you more regulars know, we're doing these now every week, which is great. And we're getting on some terrific guests and co-hosts. So I'm going to introduce Ryan in just a second. But so today we're going to be talking about it says product market fit, but really it's more about also like how do you measure the success of your product? How do you know it's gaining traction? A few housekeeping items. Please remain muted unless it's your turn to talk. So we'll call on you. We will leave time for Q&A, but in the meantime, feel free to light up the chat. Um, I'll do my best to monitor the chat, and if you have a question, we'll try and address it in real time as best as we can. Otherwise, we'll do it at the end. You can also raise your virtual hand. There's a virtual hand button in Zoom if you're not familiar. You can do that as well. I get asked this all the time, so a replay will be sent out. You will get a replay, okay? And if you're a paid subscriber Inner Circle member, you'll get a few other additional goodies from this. For any of you who don't know me, I'm Shardul. If this is the first time you're coming into one of these events, um, I've built my career outside of Silicon Valley, which is an interesting thing that Ryan and I were actually talking about the other day. I've worked across multiple industries. I've been in executive roles. I've founded several companies, and now I have a newsletter. So check it out. I'm gonna brag. It's good. You should check it out. I put a lot of effort into it. People seem to get a lot out of it. So you can go ahead and check it out. There's a free version and there's a paid version. All right, and just to give you a sneak peek, we have a number of great events coming up. There's a live group chat Q&A with me that's coming up, so you can ask me any question you want. We also have our PM Exchange Roundtable, which is coming up as well. But we've got, as you can see, a host of great co-hosts and guests coming up. One of them is on the call here, Sam. Very excited about ours, Sam. So that's going to be really good. We have one on PRDs with Alice Stoltnick. We got Matt LeMay. If you haven't had a chance to check out his book, he's got a book, Impact First Product Teams. Scott Burleson, David Bland, and Joe, who's actually Ryan's partner in crime on the product Porch. And I believe he's here as well. So with that, let me do a quick introduction of our my co-host for today, Ryan Cantwell. So Ryan is a principal consultant and trainer with Productside. He's been in product management for, I think, more than 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, right, Ryan?
That's right. Yep.
He started as a hands-on practitioner, as did many of us, before moving into leadership roles and then eventually consulting. And I've gotten to know Ryan over the last few weeks, and what I love about him, where we connected, is his passion. Those of you who know me know my passion for product management. He's got the same crazy, insane passion for it as well. It's probably unhealthy for both of us, but you know what? We're swimming in it. But also, more importantly, he just has a genuine passion for helping product people, helping product teams, uncover real customer problems, build products that make a difference, help them with their jobs, just to be able to do their jobs better. Best of all, he's co-host of the Product Porch podcast. Now, I'm gonna do a shameless plug for him here. I know there's a ton of product related podcasts out there, with varying degrees of okayness, I'll say, but his is the real deal. His is actually one of the better ones. It's three real life PMs talking about real world stuff that PMs go through. And I was recently a guest, full disclaimer. He and his co-host Joe were extremely gracious. We had a ton of fun. And Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, it should be coming out in towards the end of October, right?
In 2 weeks, yeah. So your episode will drop just in 2 weeks where we talk about a similar thing here about product market fit, Shardul.
Yeah, awesome, great. So yeah, so that's Ryan. Ryan, anything to add about? Hopefully, I did you honors.
Yeah, no, you did. That's a hard act to follow, so I appreciate it. But just out of curiosity, I always like to ask people, how many of you feel like you fell into product management by accident? Like, I know that's very true of me. Like it just kind of happened to me. It wasn't something I was like, yes, like I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna be a product manager. But we're these product people, and I love the title, Shardul, of your newsletter and these webinars, the Street Smart Product Manager, because we learn from those school of hard knocks, and the fact that you're giving everybody this awesome outlet is something I find great, and to have the opportunity to contribute to it and add my voice is just something that is I appreciate very much. So thank you.
Brilliant. All right, so we're gonna do a quick pulse check before we dive into the details of our topic here. So, have any of you been told to get product market fit, either exactly that way or anything similar, without really being given a lot of guidance on what that means? So go ahead and maybe put that into the chat. I'll give you guys a second. Yeah, Vinay is like, yes. Yeah, so we got a whole bunch of yeses. All right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this is a bit of an do you have product market fit? Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have it?
Okay, here's another one. How would you define product market fit? Go ahead and put that in the chat. What's your definition, or maybe a definition you've heard or you've been told on what is product market fit? Oh, the fan has been told we have product market fit without being clear. That is awesome. That's
That is, yeah, Dipian, that's wonderful.
that
We're
is
going to talk about that today.
yeah. So what's your definition of product market fit, or what definition have you heard? People refer their friends. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
My
interesting.
mom, my mom likes the product. Should be good. Product market fit.
Mm.
PMF is your product that
Oh, it
solves a
solves a
problem.
problem. Okay.
Pulls customers rather than reaching out. Customer pull versus company push is the value
Push.
reliable. Yeah, okay. So none of these are wrong or bad,
Yeah.
but but it's also at the same time indicative of the fact that the definition is all over the place. There's no consensus or consistent definition. All right, one last thing, one last question. What metrics do you use or have you used to be able to track your product's success or even maybe your features success, whether it's, let's say, in the 0 to 1 phase or maybe the 1 to n phase where you're trying to like grow it? What are some of the metrics that you guys have used? Oh, Laura's got a great comment. If the market is a round hole, our product is a round peg.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
Oh, adoption. Okay.
Late adopter adoption.
Ooh, free paid
Adoption, free to pay
conversion,
conversion, how much revenue? Oh, yeah, I like the
retention.
revenue one. Okay, well, hold
Yep.
that thought. We'll get to that one. Retention, signups.
Testimonials.
Yeah, you guys are all smarter than um, most other PMF advocates. Majority market share. Well, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So great stuff. So this is what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna talk, and I'm gonna hand it over to Ryan in a second. We're gonna talk about what is product market fit supposed to be and what it's not. Maybe a little bit of also the history of how it came to be. And then we're going to kind of basically debunk the whole thing. And we're going to talk about what actually matters, right? And how do you actually measure product success? And that could be whether you're pursuing a brand new product, or even it could be like, let's say, some meaningful feature. I'm not talking about small enhancements, right? But some meaningful, major new feature, which is supposed to drive revenue or some kind of meaningful ROI, right? These principles basically apply there as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Go ahead and as we go through, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan now, and then we'll kind of go back and forth. But as you guys come up with questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Raise your virtual hand, and then I will then call on you. All right. So Ryan, let me hand it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Shardul. Great introduction. I just want to mention everybody, I like to keep this informal. If you have questions, don't hesitate to interrupt and add it into chat. We'll answer those on the fly. But as we get started talking about this topic, we got a little bit of a story to tell. I was an experienced product manager. I was hired by a new company. And walking into that company, there were a few big projects already in flight. They were running. So, as I'm getting acquainted and things with the lay of the land and the different stakeholders, I sit down with my VP one day and he says to me, our last product launch didn't go as planned. Nobody bought it. This time, we need product market fit. Your job is to make sure we get it. So, much like the responses that you all were giving us here in the chat, I felt the same way. Like, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do with that? So, I started asking around, and every person I talked to in the organization was giving me a different definition of what they called product market fit. But most, I will say, had something in common. It was every definition I got focused on an internal company goal and had ignored the market completely. So
Mm.
I I was seeing this weird disconnect happening. So, oh, and by the way, my favorite response, one person told me, "You'll just know it when you see it."
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess I
You'll feel it. You'll
it's
just feel. Got it.
Oh yeah. So this is when like the flop sweat starts from like what did I just get myself into? And I realized that they weren't using product market fit as something to stand behind and achieve. It was like a slogan or it was a rallying cry, not something that was tangible or even understood.
Mm.
So they couldn't even operationalize it. So like as I was looking at things, it was I mean, I guess a brief history, Shardul, if we can.
Yeah.
It started in the earliest days of Silicon Valley, everybody, when a venture capital urged investors to find a big market and the rest will follow. So that kind of has been shaped by his protege, Andy Ratchleff was his name, to and gave it a name. He was the first one to call it product market fit. And it kind of captured that life or death moment when a startup discovers real demand for a product. Like they're starting to see traction or success. And then Mark Anderson, a smart fella who was kind of a big name in the 90s tech boom, turned it into gospel, declaring it's the only thing that matters, like product market fit. So that's where it comes from. So
And then just then a bunch of others latched onto it as well. Like I've seen Stephen Blank and a bunch of others
yeah,
start saying, "Oh, you got to get product market fit." So yeah,
yeah.
it just suddenly became very popularized among Silicon Valley startups.
Absolutely. And I think Dan Olson has his book. It's been out there a little while now, but I hear him talking about it still, like product market fit and those sort of things. So yeah, let's start talking about the problem. Like what are we seeing? If we all use product market fit as a slogan, what's actually broken underneath? So you can go ahead and change slides on me. Sure, dual. So after that conversation with my VP, I started digging deeper. The more I listened, the more it sounded like we were all chasing the same horizon, but we couldn't even agree on what direction that horizon was in. It was like I was Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunners product market fit. And every time I would get close, things would shift or move and they'd get a little further ahead. Or I would slam myself into the painted on tunnel on the side of the mountain, just like Wile E. Coyote. But teams are treating product market fit more like a milestone, like it's something to cross, a victory to declare, and then we move on. But I see a reality as it behaves more like a mirage. It's kind of like shifting, never clearly defined, and not necessarily a destination. And the confusion leads to, I think, three outcomes where we've given it binary labels that force us into yes or no answers. We maybe have conflicting metrics on how to measure if we have it or not, or we're making progress towards it. And we're even stalling decisions that burn trust and momentum. So if we think about product market fit as a milestone, as something to cross, customers might not line up for it. But the reality is we are moving. It's just we don't really get to yell, "We made it." It's we're always moving after it as we go along. So if this is what's broken, let's look at how we got here and why smart, capable teams are falling into the same trap.
And Ryan, just before you get into that, you said something interesting in your earlier story where when you were asking what is product market fit, and you found that a lot of those definitions were like internal metrics or internal.
Yeah.
What were some of those internal metrics? that were
Yes.
told to you to measure the success of the product?
So this is how I would define them. Lagging indicators of business success. So revenue, gross margin. In my case, it was like reoccurring revenue, ARR. We looked at TCV, like total contract value. We were looking at a few things like just satisfaction, like very general, like satisfaction, but no real behavior. Like I wasn't measuring the user in any particular way. I was just looking or waiting for, that's the right word, is waiting for, the business was waiting for, well, do we see the chart going up on our business performance? It was like all of those indicators.
Right.
Hmm. All right. So let's pull back the curtain a little bit and
Yeah,
confess
hey,
to,
actually, Ryan, so Brian does have a question.
oh, yes.
Yeah, because he just, I think in line with just the thing that we just talked about, how do you balance leading indicators of product market fit, like retention curves, activation rates, or word of mouth, with lagging indicators like NPS and revenue, especially in B2B or enterprise contexts where feedback cycles are long?
Yeah. Yeah. This is kind of the meat of what we're talking about. How do we balance these things? And I might reserve my answer a little bit, Shardul, until later,
Yeah,
because we're
cool.
gonna we're gonna dig into this a little bit. So I don't
Awesome.
want to ignore Dipian, your question. We're gonna get to it. I just don't want to jump too far ahead.
Yeah,
All right. All right, so let's see where it's going wrong. We as a collective product community have kind of accidentally built a beautiful mess surrounding this concept of product market fit. So let's take it away. All right, so as I started getting a very fuzzy picture of what product market fit was, I started noticing how teams tried to fill the void, and it's kind of related to this conversation and Dipian, even your question. We were looking for proof of success. So we were grabbing the things that looked shiny and think of those things as more of the proxies instead of proof. And proxies, they're like participation trophies. They were making us feel good. Like we were seeing some indicators like, ooh, people are signing up. Like, look at this, we got some downloads. Things were happening. But it didn't mean we'd won the game yet. Like we weren't looking far enough ahead. So proxies, I started to recognize look like progress, but it didn't really prove anything to me. It was like a false wall. And I didn't look beyond it. So proof, on the other hand, what we started to change the conversation around was requiring some cost or commitment that was something more tangible, whether it was money, effort, data, reputation, like those kind of things that would indicate to me that, hey, something's happening here. And I kind of put into place, hey, if we're tracking this thing and we can't do anything, if we see it go up, we see it go down, and we cannot change our behavior to address it, or we can't make a decision based on it, it's not evidence. We don't need to track it. It's got to go. So we started to ask that tough question, and that was a little bit of a turning point in my story. So if proxies are the problem, what's the bill we're paying for chasing them? I wanted to answer that too. So let's look at what we have next. And that's the confusion tax. This is like the hidden cost if we chase these proxies, where every time we optimize for the wrong signal, that's what we're paying in what I'm calling the confusion tax. It's like lighting money on fire to stay warm. It looks impressive for a second, but you're still cold and broke. So in the end, we've done nothing. So if we are chasing those kind of false signals, we pay the tax in our own effort, our own budget, our own time and effort. And the louder we shout product market fit, the less believable we become because we might be confused thinking we have it, but then we're not seeing any long-term or real tangible success coming from it. So, if anyone here has ever celebrated a metric you secretly knew didn't mean anything, You can tell us about it or raise your digital hand if you've done that before. I know I certainly have.
I, I just thought of your image there makes reminded me of The Dark Knight. There's
Yes, the Joker. He just wants to see the world burn. Yeah.
and he's got that pile of the mafia money that he's got, and the mafia guy is just like, he's just so disturbed that at the
Yeah.
burning burning all the money. No, anyways, sorry. Maybe it probably isn't. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, guys. Sorry, it's just what popped into my head and seeing that image. So sorry for the digression. Please continue.
That's all right. So let's move on and talk about why we fall for it. Okay, so we we don't wake up wanting to chase proxies or vanity metrics because maybe we hear them by those names too. If anyone's heard of a vanity metric, so we fall for these things because I think the systems that naturally our businesses put in place for us as product people reward it. I think there's kind of this symptom that's happening. It's almost like, and I love this. If I have any fans of the American version of The Office in the audience, you'll know exactly what I'm going to talk about in a second. But there was the episode where Michael Scott he decides to declare bankruptcy, and he did it just by yelling, "I declare bankruptcy!" Like that's how he thought it happened. And that's kind of how we treat product market fit. If we yell it loud enough, maybe it's gonna happen. So we gotta look at it this way. And that's kind of not how we want to do it, but we want to behave a little bit differently. So let's look at these three levers that we've got in front of us. Let's start with language. Language, when we say prove product market fit, what we really mean is make the business feel safe. But what the team hears is, I don't know what to do either. Like you're kind of doing it, but they don't know what to do either. So let's kind of close that gap. Like what do we mean when we say product market fit? Not just a nebulous concept. And then we have incentives, not in like or like the necessary the monetary incentives. That's not what I'm getting at. But think about it as what we celebrate. We high five for launches and pilots, not learning. And that's dangerous because imagine celebrating the number of swings in baseball instead of runs scored. So I know, Joe, you got that one right away. Joe's a big baseball guy. But it's like, yeah, the and Shardul, I know you're a cricket guy.
Yeah.
Like, all right, just we're putting effort, like we're doing things, but to what end are we doing them? Is what we got to ask. Like, what are we celebrating? What are we rewarding? And then we
Or
have a
like,
cadence. Oh, go ahead.
his swing looks great. Or if there are any cricket aficionados, his form looks great. Yeah, but he's not scoring any runs. So
Right.
what ultimately what ultimately matters are runs.
Exactly. Like there's a scoreboard. We better make progress on that, not just how good we looked. So as we look at a cadence, then I also see businesses falling into a pattern where we review results too infrequently. Like our cadence is too long, which is like trying to steer a car by looking out the back window. Like where were we? So we need to try to keep things in front of us and be a little quicker in how we turn over that cadence and getting signals that we're making progress. So let's so I'm suggesting a little bit of a reboot to this operating system that we have that we've labeled product market fit and swap the broken idea that we have for it into something a little more practical, testable, and hopefully useful that we're going to come away with today. So there's got to be a better way. And so enough diagnosing. Like we've done a lot of that already. I want to talk about the cure. And I can tell you, spoiler alert, it's not a bigger dashboard. It's just a better way to collect proof. That's what we're looking for here. All right, so what I'm going to introduce now is something I'm calling the minimum viable evidence. So I'm going to apply minimum viable to something new. So go ahead, or you can switch to the first slide that we've got here. But this is a simple shift that I'm kind of looking at where that traditional notion of product market fit, it is very inspirational. We love it. It motivates us. Yeah, like it sounds like we should be doing that. But it doesn't really show us the way. But minimum viable evidence acts more like a guide. It guides us. Product market fit, that's the why. Minimum viable evidence, that's the how. That's how we go about achieving it. So, like we said before, if product market fit is the horizon, it's far away, constantly moving. Minimum viable evidence is our compass in your hand that is making sure you don't chase the wrong horizon. You check your compass to make the next right move. Or I had a smart guy tell me once, we have to make the decision at the last responsible moment. Not like at the last moment, but the last responsible moment. So we're looking for those steps. So as we look at things, instead of asking, are we there yet? We start asking, what evidence do we have this week that we are headed in the right direction? It's giving us that heading. So as we talk about this concept of minimum viable evidence, we can start to ask, what does that actually measure? What signals tell us we're on the right path? And I think kind of this is where we're getting into Dippy, your question. Okay, we're balancing leading and lagging and things like that. What are we looking for here? So let's look at maybe the first one. And I saw this a little bit come through in the earlier questions. So we can move on to the next section.
There we go.
And yeah, so now as we look at this and we transition to we're gonna be looking for signals because I mean, if we talk about product market fit, you can't know you have it until you have it. Your product has to be out in the world and successful, and then you can kind of declare later on. But how do we start looking earlier and predict? Because that's what I see everybody was asking me to do. They wanted me to predict you will go get it instead of go get it. And so now let's look for that early evidence to make sure we are more confident decision makers in chasing that horizon. All right. So we've got the compass. It's time to check if it's actually pointing north or if we've just been wandering confidently in circles. And we all hear this as product people. Start with the problem. Like, start with the problem. I think that's kind of a nebulous thing too, but I'm not even saying problem. I'm saying look for pain, like friction points. This is where we're looking for ways where we're creating value through our product. If people are going through a workflow, they're doing a particular thing, and you see hacks and workarounds and kind of kludged together solutions, that's a friction point. And one of the most interesting things that I ever encountered as a product person was I was doing a long series of voice of the customer interviews and making observations where they were showing me behaviors, the steps they take, and the things they do. And I was seeing things that they didn't even recognize as a friction point. To them, it was just normal. But through my eyes and that of my research team, we saw things that was like, oh my gosh, this could be so much better. They're like going the roundabout way to accomplish this task in my product or in the tool that they were using today. So be on the lookout. Like look for those signals of like workarounds and where things are taking too long and measuring that wasted time and the cost that sits behind it. And even look for frequency. How often does it occur? And how painful or intensely is that pain felt? So observe, watch them, see what's going on, and you're gonna start to notice patterns emerge. Because when you see a common mistake being made, now you've got a signal that you can create value to start to create some of that pull early for yourself. You could that is an assumption you can go experiment against. All right. So I also found it was easy for me during kind of those customer conversations, the experiments we were running, the tests, for me to ask questions and get feedback. It was easy. It's very low risk. Somebody could tell me this is the best idea I've ever heard in my life. But is that reality? I had to start questioning that. And this is where we need to separate interest from evidence. Anyone can say they love your product. That's cheap. Commitments is where people start to have to invest something, whether it is literal payment. Whether it is effort, some energy or time needs applied and spent there, or some risk. Like there's got to be some skin in the game, as we say, and that's where your data starts to mean something. It's almost like a gym membership, right? Everyone says they'll go, but only the people who actually show up and sweat are proving that it's usable and it can work.
So
Oh,
let me jump in here
yeah.
real quick, Ryan, and this kind of gets back to Debian, your question.
Hmm.
So as an example of, I call this currency. Is the customer willing to spend some currency? That could be actual money, but it could be some of these other forms that Ryan is talking about here, certainly in the early days, right? And one example in the enterprise space is like a pilot program. So a very specific example is the last company I was at. We were building a Gen AI product,
Hmm.
the health tech space. Um, and we essentially ran a pilot with a very early, with an early adopter type customer. Now they didn't pay us for it, but what they did do was they committed their time, data, energy, resources, people towards helping us kind of co-develop, test it out, those sort of things. And then from there, we went into another phase, which for some reason we called pilot as well. But
Hmm.
it was more like a beta. But we then expanded to several other customers. We started testing a bit of pricing at that point. But again, we were running these pilot programs to again continue to prove out the product that this will actually generate real value. Customers are going to be interested in solving a real problem. They're actually going to be willing to commit. And then
Hmm.
that would lead to like, the enterprise-based long-term contract, right? We want to get to the 1 year or the 3 year or the 5 year contract, right? That then became the stepping stone. And that actually then led into a little bit of our early sales model where then the sales model became, hey, why don't we just do this because our product is so early right now.
Hmm.
So we would go and we would pitch. We will do a joint pilot with you. Now, in this case, you'll pay us, but you'll pay us maybe a fraction of what the full scope solution will be. We'll prove it out over 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And then with the hopes that we'll sign a long-term contract, right?
Yeah.
So that's an example of where, the pilot kind of becomes that currency or that commitment. Because it's the enterprise space, there was an actual SOW and contract signed that was written, right?
Hmm.
So that's just one example of an early signal, if you will, that shows. Now, does it prove that, hey, we're going to make $1 billion? Not necessarily, but does it show that, hey, we might be onto something here? We
Yeah.
have tapped into a real pain point, and the customer is willing to make some form of commitment to have our solution. And, because we're very early, we also want to prove out that, hey, we've got the right solution and they're willing to partner with us on that. So hopefully
Yep.
that's helpful. So,
I
yeah.
I love that example, Shardul. We did something similar, just to give a couple more examples, where the commitment in one case, where we would ask our primary persona that we were interviewing a lot to like get the reaction, to understand if there was a pain point, we would ask them to say, "Would you be willing to schedule a follow-up meeting with your leader?" So we could present this to them, and that would indicate to us if they would be over the moon. Like Dipai and you said, firsthand experience, great product, but no, I won't buy it. If they wouldn't say, "Nah, I'm not going to take the next meeting or trouble my boss," then we knew. Then we don't have anything. Like there was nothing there. But we started looking for even signals like that in simple ways, or asking for like put your name on the list for pre-orders. That's the commitment. Give us your information. Like it was just giving us information. There was no currency. It was just information. So we would look for some of those things and they were useful. So Dipayan, you asked the question earlier, how do we balance lagging and leading? And I want to just address that quickly. So this is where I've been successful doing that. So as we need to define two different types of outcome. Like we are outcome dealers as product people, right? We're trying to architect all these different outcomes. I got to understand the outcomes my business wants to achieve, business outcomes. I need to understand the outcomes my customer wants to achieve. So then we can put together what we call it product side. If anyone's interested in these concepts, I certainly have more information, templates, frameworks, writings, and lots of information. So come find us at product side, where we talk about success metrics. How do we measure progress towards those customer outcomes, which lead to the business outcomes and connecting them? And we would pick like two or three product success metrics. What behavior is the customer changing, and how can I measure that to know that value is being delivered? Like pain relieved, gain created. So we're looking for those things. We're going to talk about some of those metrics in a second that we can look for. Then say if we see them making those behavior changes, we should see growth in our business as we do relieve pain and create gain. There should be correlation and connection between those things. Because if there's a broken connection there, if we're doing something, the customers that, oh, it's great, they're doing all the right things, but we're not seeing growth, we might need to go start looking at other areas. Like, are people not educated correctly? Do we need marketing campaigns? Is our sales messaging off point? Do people not know how to talk about it appropriately? So we were able to then better focus on the right areas and pull the right levers to make the right difference in our business. So, and I never would focus on more than like two or three success metrics for a particular product outcome, two or three success metrics for a business outcome. And I try to just stay focused on those. So hopefully that helps, Dipian. That's how I tried to balance as best I could. Because business leaders, they're always going to want to index towards business outcomes every single time. It's up to us as product people to make that connection between product and business outcomes, or customer outcomes and business outcomes, and tell the story all like we're singing that song all the time. And that's where our value comes in. So, okay, let's continue that conversation and talk about the signals that stick. I'm sorry, you can back up real quick
Oh,
again.
sorry.
That's okay. So this is where we see progress or progression being made. And you've probably heard of pirate metrics. If you haven't, we can talk.
Fast. Yeah, be fast.
Yeah, pirate metrics. It's not, I'm not trying to reteach that, but I want to use some of those same ideas or principles of progression that we're seeing our user go through stages or steps. So when we can track movement, starting with try, where they're getting uses, that moving to value, that's like activation. I saw people talking about activation, seeing them come back and repeat use, and then even referral, whether it's sentiment, referring a friend, things like that. You can start to see these patterns and find gates, like how do they move along, and it becomes living proof that they are making progress. So as we use something like this, we've talked about commitment and progression, and now we can look at operationalizing it a little bit. This is how we take the signals, make them usable and valuable for the teams that we work with. So now we can switch to the next one. So let's roll up our sleeves, everybody. And Shardul, I know this is big for you. Let's ditch the buzzwords, just practical moves that we can use tomorrow on Friday. So let's do it. So a good tip that I have for everybody here is here's where I see the minimum viable evidence becoming real or it taking life. So we got to get our team used to this a little bit. So instead of vague goals like go prove product market fit, let's create something a little more explicit. I'm calling it a minimum viable evidence or an MVE contract. So think of it as something that's like a scoreboard on the cricket game, right? Runs matter, not the form. So the scoreboard, but it has a time limit too. I'm sorry, unlike cricket, it has a time limit. That's my cricket. The best I can do with a cricket joke, Shardul.
Not
So,
bad.
all right, but an MVE contract defines certain things. Like we're going to look at who we're testing with. Because not every product is for all segments or markets. We got to say who. Who are we testing with? Which segment specifically? What does success look like? What do those gates look like through our try and activate and retain them and refer? Like, what do those gates look like for that segment? And then you'll decide your time box. Like, when? What is an appropriate cadence to start measuring these things? And what's that shortest possible time for us to get positive signals that we can make decisions with? Remember, last responsible moment. So then we can put it all together to say when we get that information, what happens next? We have a decision rule. We have a rule in place, and then we can make forward progress. And that's it. It's short, it's testable, and it gives us the ability to be kind of binary, to say yes, it did, or no, it didn't. All right. So now we start to kind of put some polish on us as product people. This is where we shine. We don't just analyze progress, we show it. And we make the evidence that we collect very visible, transparent. Let's make it human and compelling and even motivating so people want to take action and help us make more progress towards it. Because product managers, we can build credibility by making evidence visible and meaningful. This evidence we collect. Because proof isn't louder metrics like that. That's not it. It's clearer storytelling. And it's those connections of what are we seeing in the market? How is that impacting the business? Like connection, like make those connections all the time to show customer progress is happening. So the first thing we need to do is start instrumenting for it. We want to be able to track it. I use something in my real life. We called it a bowler, of all things, a bowler, because it looked like a bowling scorecard. It was like a visual daily management technique where it essentially was a live scoreboard where we were gaining traction and we were picking some of our success metrics and we were looking at customer progress and knowing where the signal was clear and where it was still fuzzy. And that gave us a very shared view of reality. Would all see it and we would all know what it meant when we saw it. Then, as that information comes in, let's not leave people to make decisions themselves. Let's frame it. Like we got to paint the picture. And it's so don't just throw metrics at people, connect them to the things that they care about that matter to them. So, for example, don't say signups are up 20%. Say we reduced setup time and now 20% more users can reach first value in under 48 hours. And you know what that means for the business? It means more people are signing up. So look at that. We're always connecting, showing a result from the actions that we're taking and the decisions that we make. So that story, the team can really rally around is what we're looking to do. And then finally, make your wins visible. So celebrate them. So that's the incentive. Let's make sure when we do something right, and holy smokes, even when we've done something that didn't work, learning is worth celebrating. That's when we show the evidence we collect is meaningful. We now know not only what to do, but what not to do. And that focus allows the people to hear the right story and they lean in. They can start caring about the signals instead of thinking of them as nebulous and unmeaningful. So think of yourself as the narrator of your own product's documentary. Think about it that way. You're not hyping, you're showing the journey. The team is just there to see every plot twist along the way as it pops up. All right, so here's just a quick guide. If you want to put something like this into practice, this I found is an easy way to do it. It's about short, sharp rhythm that keeps the team honest and motivated. So I love to start with just a quick 5-minute metric snapshot, quickly review evidence gates, things like problem intensity, commitments that you're seeing, first value or activation, progression through the journey, and even pull as it connects to the business. So you don't even need storytelling there, just the facts, which gates are moving, which ones are likely flat, and you can kind of put that in front of everyone. And then you can start to expose where the brittle gates occur in the customer's progress, where traction is leaking, and where that will tell the team and yourself where to focus. And you can start to develop some assumptions that you can go test. What experiment will unblock us this week? What's the fastest path to learning? So, and keep the conversation about causes, not blame necessarily. It's not really the look back to say why it happened, but what's happening and how can we address it tomorrow. So finally, then we need to come to an action. Make sure that we have a concrete next move, whether it's to change something, to run a test, to stop something. But don't think about it as somebody go develops a slide deck or makes a proposal. No, no slides, no theater, just evidence, decision, next step. Keep it that way, and you'll be more successful. All right. So then we've got let's bring it home. We're gonna put all the pieces together. So this isn't a framework necessarily that I'm proposing. It's more of a mindset shift as we think about it. Before we were chasing certainty, and now we chase evidence because it's never going to be fully certain. So as we look at things, we're seeing how real traction happens. We have before where we heard debating definitions, arguing about product market fit like it was we saw Bigfoot in the woods.
Mm.
But as we move on, we now have a compass. We see the after. We have minimum viable evidence to give us a little more clarity, focus, and a shared language to make real progress. It's more like fuel for the engine rather than us going to try and reach the finish line. And because of that, we don't wait for perfect alignment. We move when we have enough evidence to take the next step. So let's make it real and put it all together. So you don't need a massive overhaul to start practicing, especially when it comes to minimum viable evidence. I would say just some space and a little bit of courage, and you can start testing yourself. So I would say start with one segment. Look at that finite place as your start to not boil the ocean. Pick a customer type you can actually reach in the next 7 days and go run a test against them. Go see if you can start instrumenting, tracking that progression and where you might find those brittle gates, because then you can pick something, that brittle gate to find the traction leak. That time to first value, the renewal hesitation, or the setup friction, whatever it might be, that's gonna tell you where to focus. And then go run an experiment. Design a very quick test to learn more. Maybe you'll change the flow. You'll tighten the ask. You'll shorten the onboarding. Pass or fail, it doesn't matter. Because in MVE, evidence beats ego. We learn something, and that's what matters.
Awesome. All right, cool. We have, I know we have got a couple of questions in the chat. Let me share a few things from my end with all of you. I'm going to build and expand on the stuff that Ryan just talked about. So, when I think, because I get asked this all the time, what does product success really mean? And oftentimes we look at things like this, right? Like if it's a new offering of some kind, are people signing up on the wait list? We like to measure usage or some form of customer engagement or satisfaction, some qualitative data of, are we getting positive feedback, maybe even press, right? Whatever those are. Not to say those aren't useful. Those can certainly be useful, but they're not real. They don't really show us if the product is actually going to be successful. Ultimately, it really comes down to this one question, right? There was a couple of sessions that we've had. One with we've had Rich Mironov on this. We've had Michael Smart. And it's funny, like in product management, for some reason, talking about money, it seems to me, makes us very nervous and uncomfortable. I'm not sure why. But the fact of the matter is that the product, in a commercial for-profit setting, the product isn't successful if it's not making money, right? So if you kind of go to your executives, right, this is the stuff ultimately that's being looked for, right? Revenue, cost savings, margin, or some other form of ROI, right? Whether it's a new product or some feature, right? So what you are really doing is it's not about whether the product itself, not necessarily if the product itself is, if customers like it, but if the underlying business model is viable and sustaining. That is what we're trying to test. And that goes for like features as well, right? If you have created a business case for, hey, we should go and build this feature on our product, right? You were hoping for a certain kind of outcome. Maybe it was revenue or maybe it's some other form of ROI, whatever that is, right? Then that's what we're going and trying to prove, right? That's the key thing. And so, I kind of look at things, if you look at it kind of in stages, right? So if you're in pre-revenue versus you've launched your product, but you're in the early days, and then you're at the point where you're looking at growth, right? What is it that really matters? So pre-revenue, you're really looking for that problem solution fit. It's not a term that I've coined. I think it was Ash Moria, to be honest. But the key question is, are customers buying? Right? Are those early customers buying? And so here's what Ryan talked a lot about running those experiments, looking for some customer commitment behavior, not just words. It's not good enough to say, yeah, I like this, or yeah, I would buy it. Well, test and see. Are they actually going to put their money behind it? Or again, there's other forms of early currency you can leverage, like we've talked about. It could be their money. Ultimately, you do need their money. I mean, like, let's be very frank. At the end of the day, they do have to pay. But short of that, there could be situations like the example I gave in the enterprise space for that Gen AI product. It could be their time, it could be their resources, it could be their social capital. They're willing to put their reputation on the line. And so that could be anything from pre-orders. I've done this once where, like, let's just take an online course. I wanted to experiment if people would be interested in this online course. I announced it to my email list and I got 20 people to pay me for a course that never existed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Of course, now I did deliver on it. Okay. I built it, delivered it to them. But that was a good early signal that, okay, there's something here, right? It could be a letter of intent. It could be a pilot, alpha, beta, whatever it might be. The danger zone is when we put an overemphasis on things like clicks and signups and wait lists and interviews and those sort of things, right? And then similarly, when we get then now we've launched, the product is available. What we're really trying to answer is, are customers buying and staying, right? Here's what we're starting to measure: inbound interest, purchasing behavior, repeat purchases and retention, strong word of mouth, referrals, that sort of stuff. And one thing is stabilizing our cost of acquisition. So one thing in product management we often skip is the go-to-market side, right? And so, hey, it's making revenue, people are buying, but is our cost for acquiring a customer starting to stabilize? In the beginning, it might be super expensive, and that's okay. We might be willing to spend more to acquire a customer. Over time, it's got to stabilize, right? And then when we get to the growth stage, we're basically looking to, pour kerosene on the whole thing, right? So, and it's all about, can we keep and scale it now? Hey, now I think we've got to the point where we've figured out a product, we've figured out a market, we know it can make money, we know customers are buying, right? There may still be improvements and things to do, but can we now build an engine behind this to fuel it? That's where we start looking at things like consistent expansion. I will tell you, certainly at the executive level, they're looking at these kinds of metrics, bookings and things like that. They're looking at the unit economics. So, by the way, one thing is that if you're not familiar with unit economics in your business, learn it. It is a game changer. And they are talking about it at leadership levels. So, is lifetime value rising exponentially over the cost of acquiring a customer? Right? Things like that. And we got to be careful for what's called the leaky bucket. Revenue looks like it's going up, but in reality, it's not profitable because we're just spending so much money either to acquire customers or retain customers. So while it looks great, the hockey stick, in reality, it's actually not profitable, right? We're not actually having real growth. This is a very busy slide, and I won't go through it. This is the kind of thing where when you guys get the replay, you might want to like pause the video to go through it. But the other thing to keep in mind is that not all metrics are created equal. This is the whole problem also with product market fit is just this universal thing that's thrown out there. Ryan talked a lot about it, but different industries and different product types may have different set of business metrics and product metrics, right? And so that becomes really, really interesting. You've got certain metrics for if you have a SaaS product, right? If you're an enterprise, anyone who's in the enterprise space knows the game is very different. Yeah, it's a SaaS product, but it's just a different model, different type of customer versus your B2C or direct to consumer. If you're pursuing a hardware device, right? So like we used to track things like returns and RMAs. That became really so we're distributing and selling product, but our return rate is really high. Well, that's not good, right? That's a sign of like we're not going to generate any traction and so on and so forth, right? So that's an example of some traction metrics. And then this slide is an example of growth metrics, right? Once you've kind of got that traction in the marketplace, what are some of the key metrics? One of the things that Ryan talked about was then taking our product metrics and then connecting it back to
Mm-hmm.
these higher level financial metrics. And in fact, in our last event with Mike Smart, I had a little chart where I showed how you can break that down, right? So, some key takeaways, keep in mind that product success is always measured ultimately monetarily, right? And we're trying to figure out, is the business model behind this viable and sustainable, right? Sure, it should have a great user experience and the features should work and obviously high quality and all those things are important. But at the end of the day, if the underlying business model is not going to work, you're not going to have a product, right? I love this. Commitment beats compliments. I loved that, right? And we talked about vanity metrics. So this is where we talked about what are they willing to commit, especially in the early stages. So if you are pursuing these MVEs, as Ryan talked about, right? These minimal viable experiments, what are we proving, or at least trying to prove, right? Or disprove for that matter. And at the end of the day, is our target customer willing to make some form of commitment, especially in the early stages, which ultimately then do something to translate into money, right? So find the real signals, right? Based on real purchasing behavior from the customer. And Ryan made a great point about sharing the proof, right? So, Ryan, you want to talk about this real quick, and then we'll get.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, everybody, thanks for sticking with me today. And if you like what I had to say and want to hear some of my other thoughts on things, you can certainly subscribe to the Product Porch podcast. I'd love to see everybody come join us on that community. But in addition to that product side, we are a group of passionate product people. Much like what Shardul has built here, we also have a community. We'd love for you to sign up for our newsletter as well at Productside, because we are hosting webinars once every other week on a variety of topics, and we put all kinds of free stuff into the world, templates and tools and tips and tricks, all kinds of things to all of you. And then most of all, if anything, just connect with me. I'd love to have everybody give me a connection request on LinkedIn, and you'll see what I've got going on in the world, whether it's through product side, from the product porch perspective, or just my comings and goings to various product meetups around the country.
And again, those of you who don't know, I run a newsletter. There's a free version, so you can subscribe there, but there's a paid version as well where you get, frankly, a lot more tools. And I go a lot deeper on a lot of these strategies, right? So you can go there and you can check it out. Now, I know we had some questions. I know we're about a couple of minutes away from time. If you product managers are busy, if you got to go, go. Ryan, I don't know if you're welcome to stay if you can. I can stay for another
Unfortunately,
five
I do
minutes.
need to run, Shardul. I'd love to stay though, but I have to run.
That's fine. Before you drop, there was one question,
Yeah.
because we do have a minute on your slide 23, where Sam was asking a question. Can you give an example based on slide 23?
That's this one here, the contract.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So an example for this, it would be, I've heard it called different things. I'm calling it a contract, and that sounds very formal. Really, what I'm putting forward here is the idea of even like a team working agreement. So I am, instead of making assumptions or we're all kind of guessing who's doing what and how do we work, I'm just formalizing it. In fact, Shardul, maybe I can share it with you so you can share it with the audience. But I've got a template for a team working agreement. It's just an Excel file. It's very simple. That way you
Yeah,
can
that'd be
see how
awesome.
these come together, and it'll allow you to say, as I'm interacting with the team that needs to know and is helping me collect the evidence that's helping me understand what or needs to understand if we're chasing the horizon, then it's going to set you up for success. With everybody will have a clear expectation of what's coming and what to do.
Yeah, awesome. All right,
Hmm.
Ryan, I know you got to jump.
Hmm.
Brent, I'm happy to take your question before we call. Thanks so much, Ryan. Really appreciate you being
Thank you,
on.
everybody.
Guys, go connect with Ryan. He's great. He's smart. He's gonna help you out. Brent, let's see. It seems that time and effort commitment from users could also transform into pain and disengagement. It feels like there needs to be an assessment of the quality of the commitment. I'll just say real quick that I mean, obviously, um, if if a customer is investing a lot of time and effort in solving their current pain point, then that could be a signal that, hey, that might be a problem worth solving. And by word solving, meaning they might be willing to actually pay to have it solved, right? And so, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. Whatever solution we're putting out there in the marketplace, we are trying to alleviate. We're trying to help them gain time back or alleviate their stress or their pain or the effort that they're putting. We're trying to make their lives easier, right? In a nutshell. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to end it there, folks. You guys will get the replay, but thanks so much for joining. As you saw, we have a whole bunch of more events coming up, so you can go to streetsmartproductmanager.com/events or get on the email list and you'll get heads up. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.